With version 3.0 around the corner, I figured right now is a great time to do another tower adversity testing video where I tested over 30 teams across all 4 floors in the middle tower. Keep in mind, I didn't do anything in the side towers just because I feel that those towers are very easy and most people can handle. However, with the 2 new additional floors that Kuro has recently added to the middle tower, they definitely did up the difficulty a little bit, and I think with those floor additions, more people are going to be struggling, especially new players that are just starting the game or people that don't have fully developed accounts like most people. As someone that personally has every single limited character and has them all built with pretty exceptional builds, I would say, I figured this would be a great video for players just to get a general idea of where the meta is lining up right now. Full disclaimer, obviously Wuthering Waves has a pretty major component of like skill issue and the way you play players in certain teams, so just consider this as one data point and don't fully rely on my results to paint the bigger picture of how the results will be for everyone that plays the game. So without further ado, we're going to start taking a look at the first floor results, and I have this on a floor by floor basis in order of the fastest clear times to slowest clear times. These first 2 floors in general, they cater to both Fusion and Havoc teams, with there being a 10% decrease of those respective resistances for the enemies, and Glacio and Electro teams are definitely going to be at a disadvantage here with those resistances increased by 10%. Even further so for floor 1 for Glacio teams, simply being that the enemy is a Glacio resistant enemy. In addition to those elemental matchups, also Echo skill damage teams are getting a significant boost here, as well as heavy attack damage types, which is going to lead us into the team with the fastest clear time, and that is Zani, Peeb, Rover. In general, all 3 Zani variants were the top 3 fastest clear times. Mind you, I am a Zani main, so like I do play her a lot, and I am like doing a bit of quick swapping as I play her, which to me personally, I honestly don't feel like it's something that's too hard to do, like at least in comparison to quick swapping with other teams, like say for example like Mono Fusion and things of that nature. Zani has very long attack animation windows and gives you plenty of time to like switch and do stuff during that long animation. It's a win-win situation to switch out, because if you did stay on her and not swap, like you could get interrupted and get damaged, so like there's kind of no reason to not at least try to do it. At least that's the way I see it. Obviously take this with a grain of salt. Like I said, I am a Zani main, I do play her a lot. Definitely her team has like one of the highest skill ceilings when you get better at playing her. Most consistently a top tower performer for me especially. I will say for sure between these 3 variations that Zani, Peeb, Rover is definitely the more difficult one to pull off, and if you are someone that like wants to try to start getting into Zani quick swapping and things of that nature, honestly my #1 recommendation for that, and this is coming from Zani main, is going the Peeb shorekeeper route. It's just easier and more simple. When you add Rover into the mix, it can be a bit more complicated and a bit more difficult if you're just like starting to get into it, but it definitely does have the even higher skill ceiling once you master it. On this floor specifically, Chisa is benefiting by the Havoc res decrease by 10%, so that's kind of helping her a little more on this showcase here. However, I do have her on this team on a rejuvenating glow set, so her damage isn't really that much of a difference. I did experiment and switch and try her on both rejuvenating glow and her like 3-piece, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but like her damage focus set, and I didn't really notice too much of a difference between her damage. And also just me personally, whenever I was playing her, at least on the Spectral Frazzle teams, I preferred having her on Rejuvenating Glow. 1, to buff the main attacker on a team, or in general to buff the attack of the whole team. And 2, having Rejuvenating Glow with Fallacy as the main slot Echo helped significantly with her energy regen issue, because when I had her on the other set, I was definitely running into some energy issues sometimes, so it could be a build issue. I just need, you know, more pieces on that set with more ER, but it just made it easier for me and more simpler. So that's my recommendation if you're getting Chisa and trying to play her in Spectral Frazzle teams. When you're looking at the difference between Zani's personal damage between having Chisa or Shorekeeper on the team, we're talking a difference of like just like 2,000 or 3,000 per heavy nightfall. Zani's damage is ever so slightly lower, but Chisa's personal damage is much greater than Shorekeepers. So take with that as you will. You know, I'm just saying she's viable, she can work if you want to use her, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. After that, the next two best scoring teams our Galbrena teams, which funny enough, I actually had Mortefi Lupa score better than Chuyon Shorekeeper. Obviously, it's only a difference of 2 seconds here, but I have to say I was quite surprised with how well the Galbrena Mortefi Lupa team was. Obviously, you're going no healer in this team. You may want to go the more safer route, and if you are playing Lupa, maybe go with Brant instead. That version of it is just a couple seconds behind, a little lower here at 107. And also with that same time, we also have Galbrena Lupa Shorekeeper. Carrying on, we have Cardathea Premium with Chacona, one variation with Rover, one variation with Chisa, and I literally got the exact same score for these two variations. Chisa can be better than Rover, however the differences are going to be minimal, as you can see here. A lot of people, I do understand, like, they just really do not like playing Rover and the way his kit feels, or his or her kit feels to play. We have 3 Furlova variations, the fastest scoring one being Furlova, Cantarella, Rocha, and for some reason Furlova, Cantarella, Shuyon does have quite a dip in comparison to that and the other variations. This is really just like content dependent, or just like the way you play it. The differences between playing Furlova, Cantarella with either Rocha or Shuyon are like very minimal, if any. Usually it really just comes down to just like how your run went and like you playing it. And I forgot to mention earlier that for all these limited characters, I am using signature weapons on all of them except Rocha. I'm having her on Jing Liao Sig, and the other case scenario that I do not have a signature weapon is for Gion. But aside from those 2 cases, I have everyone's signature weapon. One thing I will have to say is if you aren't going the full like triple echo team variations and you're just running Shorekeeper in the mix, the difference between Cantarella and Shuyon I found throughout this testing was very similar throughout, but both teams feel super strong. Just under that, we have the Augusta Hypercarry team with Yuno and Shorekeeper. As I went over earlier, there is a Electro Res decrease here with 10%, but this team did still exceptionally well. We need under 2 minutes to clear on these floors, and so her free-to-play alternative still scored comfortably well with like giving you well over 30 seconds to spare. Moving on to the Mono Fusion team. This team also did solid. These times that I have reflected on this sheet for every single floor, I was doing Mono Fusion quick swapping, which I know that that's not something that's like accessible for everyone, or not everyone really knows how to do it, but just me personally, I wanted to give it a try. In terms of how this team performs without the quick swapping, whenever I was doing my testing, I would first just get a baseline run of just doing 1, 2, 3. The difference in clear time between playing it in that style to my best runs and playing quick swap style was about like 20 to 30-ish seconds. So this team still clears relatively easily without doing all that, but it was just something that I wanted to give it a shot on my end. And now we're going down to another Galbrena free-to-play option. I mean, this is the same exact team as the other one that I did up here, but we're just swapping Lupa in for Shorekeeper instead, and there was a decent difference between the two, which can be a testament of just how strong Lupa is in general. But this is another free-to-play option, but may be a bit more comfortable to most players because we have that healing with Shorekeeper. And now we're getting to Zani's free-to-play option. This is just no peep at all, and this one definitely had a good amount of time to spare. Once again, I am doing swaps between Nightfalls, which is something you're definitely gonna like need to do if you're trying to go the peebless route. Then we have one more Furlova team here. You know, you're going no healer and you're going kind of dual DPS with Furlova and Galbrena. You're usually or generally wanting to play them as their own DPSs on different teams, but it is something that works together if it's something that you would like to opt in to do. Going down to Augusta's free-to-play alternative here, we kind of touched on this earlier about it having a 10-second difference. Still cleared very well. Moving on to Camellia. She is my only limited character that I currently have sequence nodes activated. Aside from her, everyone else is S0. She is S2. In S0, Camellia would probably be taking around 20 seconds longer to get it clear, maybe even longer. So yeah, just like throwing that out there. She definitely scored with plenty of time to spare with the Sanhua Shorekeeper variation. This was my best variation. The Rocha variant ended up taking a decent amount longer, a little over 10 seconds longer. Going down to Peeb Rover Chisa, this was the best performing Peeb main DPS variation. Whenever you're playing main DPS Peeb, she, in contrary to Zani, she actually will benefit from the passive of Chisa's signature weapon. So she does kind of get a bit more out of it. The same team variation, but with Shorekeeper instead of Chisa was was about 10 seconds longer. Moving on to other options, one with Mortefi, one with Chacona, and then one with Sanhua. Not a huge difference between the variations. Definitely versatile, and you can run her in a multitude of different team scenarios. The next best scoring one was Gion, Yuno, Chacona. This team is actually like pretty awesome for Gion mains. I definitely would recommend even just swapping out Chacona for Shorekeeper instead, but keeping Yuno. This time difference isn't that insane, but in terms of like when I was playing the teams, just Chacona felt so much easier and just like better to play in my opinion. Just underneath that, we have some other variations of Cardathea that aren't necessarily best in slot, but I was just trying just different variations with her. This one still keeps Chacona but has Shorekeeper instead. And then this was a free-to-play option. I ended up going, yeah, this is her first non-Chacona variation that I tested. Still scored exceptionally well on this one, and that same team but with Rover instead of Chisa did noticeably worse, almost about 20-ish seconds. This could have just been skill issue on my part. I don't remember exactly how the run went, but in theory there's not much of a difference between Chisa and Rover, but this was just one piece of content that for some reason I ended up doing pretty bad with Rover. We have P Rover Shorekeeper. I talked a little bit about that earlier. Camellia Roach Shorekeeper, as I stated earlier, did a decent amount worse than just having Sanhua. Was much more simpler. And then here's another team that I ended up just doing last minute to help give me vigor when I was testing other floors with like Hypercarry Brant with Sanhua and Lupa. I didn't test during this video, but I do think if you're someone that really loves Brant and wants to play him in a Hypercarry scenario, I think actually the better team would be Lupa Shorekeeper. I'll have to do that the next time I do one of these videos, because I know I've played that team before and I really loved how it felt, at least in the floor that I did it back then. We talked about the Peep teams earlier. The Sanhua Rover ended up being the poorest one of all variations for this floor specifically. And then we have our first two or only two Jinty teams, and she was able to clear with just about 10 seconds to spare here with the HP inflation, and I guess you may or may not call it a bit of power creep. It definitely is getting noticeably more difficult to clear content with her. Luckily I was able to clear with her on this one, but as we'll see later, it wasn't always the case for the other floors. And then we have Gion's OG free-to-play team, or just in general OG hypercarry team before Yuno and Chacona were a thing, and that one just scored with about 8 seconds to spare here. So definitely not the best, but was doable. Friendly reminder that I do not have his SIG. And then here was a Camellia variation that I ended up trying just for the sake of it. It definitely isn't recommended for Camellia to pull Chisa, but was just something that I ended up doing for the sake of this, these floor buffs. And then we have the last three teams that I tested for this floor that I just simply was not able to get a successful clear in. This Zhangli Yao Yinlin one I am so upset about, because this was the floor that I had the best chances of clearing. I don't remember if I saved the footage or not, but I kid you not, I literally casted his liberation right at the 2-minute mark to where I thought like I was gonna get the clear, and I killed him with that liberation, but for some reason it just like the time did not line up well, and it considered it like 1 second over, and I was kind of gypped out of my 3-star clear with him. I do think that this floor specifically, like I wouldn't be surprised if someone else out there has gotten a successful clear with this team, but however, just me personally, I was literally just short off the mark by, I'm talking like milliseconds. Obviously this is a floor with buffs that are working against him here with the Electro Res. If it did not have that, he definitely would have been able to clear. This was another Gion variation I did that I believe cleared one of the floors, but just was not able to clear this one specifically. RIP Carlotta with this reset specifically, just with the Glacio Res 10% on top of it being a Glacio enemy, just wasn't able to get anywhere close. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't really expect to get anywhere close to that. But now let's move on to the second floor. We're working with the same buffs here, but this time as we go into the enemies, we have a mix of Electro and Glacio enemies, but also we're seeing a bit of multi-wave and AoE with the first two specifically. Same thing here with a top scoring team. We have the Zani P Rover team, but this time there was a little bit of more competition with the Echo skill buff specifically. Galbrana Hypercarry with Shuyan was just under it at 56, and then we have back to the other Zani variations with one with Shorekeeper, one with Chisa, just a couple seconds of a difference between the two. Then Frolova is just underneath. at 1 minute 06 with her Shuyan Shorekeeper variation. So this one actually ended up being better than any of the full triple Echo focus teams. But when we get into the Echo focus teams, the Cantarella Shuyan variation did edge out the Cantarella Rocha variation. Moving on to Cardathea, we have her Hyper Carry with Rover scoring the best in this case, despite the Havoc res, and Chisa being just a couple seconds behind. Once again, this could be skill issue on my part and just like the way you play the two, but definitely very close in results. Then we have a couple more fusion teams. We have Galbrena Lupa Shorekeeper, and with the same time was the triple fusion with Chengli Brant Lupa. Once again, this is doing quick swapping shenanigans. Moving on to Gion actually being, among the top 10. Oh no, just out of top 10. He placed 11th in this case, but very solid with the Yuno Chikona variation. As I said earlier, this is the best filling variation for me whenever I play Gion, and something that I definitely recommend for Gion mains. Then we have two more for Loba variations, and then we have like the dual DPS one with Galbrena, and that scoring just underneath it, which is once again very solid team. We have another Cardathea variation. This was the one without either Rover or Chisa, so we aren't getting the double arrow erosion stacks here, but still scoring pretty well. Then we have Galbrena Mortefi Lupa at 119, Frolova Cantarella Shorekeeper with the same time. A decent difference in comparison to the Shuyan variation. Galbrena Brant Lupa, Galbrena Mortefi Shorekeeper, doing honestly basically the same as like a full mono fusion comp with her. I mean, in general, all three of these are actually within just a couple seconds of each other. The best scoring Camellia version here was once again with Sanhua as opposed to Rocha. We're talking just a 6-second difference this time. Then we have Gion Shorekeeper at 127. A decent difference without Chikona. I'm telling you, Chikona does actually make a huge difference. Then we have the first Jinxie variation. The other variation I did barely cleared with 1 second to spare, whereas this one has over 30 seconds to spare. I guess that must have just been a matter of the difference of the resistances, working for Cantarella in this team and working against Jeja in this team, but I really can't believe that there was that much of a discrepancy, but I guess it does make sense. Then the Camellia Rocha variation, like I said earlier, just doing it a little bit worse. Augusta Augusta Hyper Carry. Obviously Augusta is at a disadvantage here with the Electro res on top of Mega Abomination being Electro, as well as the first wave also being Electro. Still scored with 30 seconds to spare, so pretty awesome performance here. Just underneath that is the Peebless Zani variation at 132. I touched on Gion earlier. This was that one variation that was not able to clear floor 1 but was able to clear this one with Chikona and Shorekeeper. We're just like trading some buffs for others in this team. It's not necessarily the best, but it is an option you can do if you need to move players around, or like say for example free up your for an Augusta team. Then back to back we have Peeb variations. This one was the best performing one for this floor specifically. Then we have Sanhua just behind it, then Rover Shorekeeper just behind that, and then with the same time Rover Chikona for Peeb teams is one that I would say only feels like necessary whenever you have multi-wave scenarios, but when you have single target boss scenarios, it's like kind of not really worth it. It could work in some cases. This is one case where that team's performance was closer to the other variations because we're starting to see multi-wave here. Going on to the Camellia team that had Chisa, about like 20-ish seconds to spare. Then we have Cardathea Sanhua Chisa. This is about 12 seconds left to spare. Brant Hyper Carry team that, like I said earlier, isn't ideal but can work on some situations. He cleared with 10 seconds to spare. Then we have another Cardathea free-to-play alternative, this time with Rover instead of Chisa at 151. The difference of only a couple seconds. This was one case where Carlotta Jeja was able to clear. Thankfully that most of the HP is going into the Mech Abomination here, which is he's not Glacio himself, so she was able to clear with a 9 seconds to spare here. Then we have full free-to-play or the OG Gion Hyper Carry clearing with just 6 seconds left to spare. Then we have Peeb Rover Chisa with just 5 seconds left to spare. Obviously this is a floor here that's kind of bricked for Electro teams. Luckily Augusta was able to do it with Yuno. Yuno definitely did kind of carry a bit with her personal damage, given that we're tackling Electro resistant content here, but unfortunately the free-to-play one wasn't able to brute force through this one, and Zhang Liao, I wasn't even able to get close on this one, to be honest, so that's unfortunate for him. Now we're moving on to the next two floors. These are the new floors that were added not so long ago that definitely have an increase in difficulty. We need a time of under 230 to clear. This is something that benefits every single person in the game. There's no one that does not get this benefit. Then we have this line here. It's basically nerfing all damage types that are not negative status damage. And in this here is kind of the same situation, at least in the next lines. Everyone benefits from the first line. Resonators ignore 30% of enemies' defense when dealing damage. That happens to everyone. But then in this middle line here, it's kind of like a payback off of this one here, where negative status damage dealt by resonators in the team is amplified by 30%. But this is the first case where Zani is dethroned here. The Cardathea Premium with Chisa obviously scored the best. We have all the buffs working in favor of that team here at 1 minute 24. And then moving on to the Zani variations, Chisa is definitely being affected in the positive here with these buffs, but she actually ended up scoring exactly the same as the Shorekeeper team in terms of just my performance and the way I played it. And so yeah, this is one situation where, you know, the theoretical highest DPS team variation with Rover, I did not do as well in this case. I feel that with the more multi-wave and just like the longer drawn out fight, there's like more room for error in playing this team. Augusta is finally not affected by, you know, any electro resistance debuffs in this case, and she's, you know, just underneath these teams. Then we have plenty of Frolova team variations towards the top. Her best performing one for this floor specifically was the Shorekeeper Hypercarry team with Shuyan. Just underneath that was the triple echo focus team with Cantarella, Shuyan. And then we have some Cardathea here. This is Cardathea Hyper with Shorekeeper in place of Chisa. We are seeing a decent amount of a difference just because of that Chisa shield that's going on here. Going back to some more Frolova variations, the Cantarella Shorekeeper one at 150. Then we have that dual DPS with Galbrena just underneath that at 152. Then we have the Rocha variation. Being on the bottom of all Frolova variations that I did, Rocha definitely feels much worse to play against, specifically whenever you get to the Sentry construct. It can be very easy for her to get like knocked out of her like when she does her whole Mamma Mia situation. Then we have Zani free to play here. This is with no Peeb, scoring at 155, a decent amount better than other free to play variations. Like say for example, we have our Augusta Mortefi down here at 209, you know, a little over a 30-second difference here, but kind of across the board throughout all these floors I've been going through, this team has kind of been somewhere around the middle, if not just above it. Then we have Cardathea Sanhua Chisa. This is the first Cardathea team that does not have Chacona. Chisa is going to edge out on Rover on this one with the buff specifically. The variation with Chisa being 156, and then the variation with Ala down here being 225, almost like a 30-ish second difference here. This is the first P DPS team. To no surprise, this one has Chisa, like I said, as we're affected by the buffs here. The highest scoring fusion team for this floor specifically was Galbrena Hypercarry, we'll show you on. Then we have just underneath that by 1 second, the triple fusion, where once again I'm doing quick swapping. Then we have mono fusion Galbrena Brant Lupa, and then 1 second behind that is the Galbrena Hypercarry with Lupa Shorekeeper. This was one situation where the Galbrena Mortefi Lupa team did not do better than most of the other variations, whereas in some of the other floors it did for me for some reason. But not much of a difference between all the variations, all things considered. Then we have the first Gion team, to no surprise here, so you know Chacona at 201. Then we have Hypercarry P with Rover Shorekeeper, and then we have, I talked about Galbrena Mortefi Lupa a little bit earlier. Then we have the Camellia teams. The best one once again was Sanhua Shorekeeper. Then we have Rocha Chisa just underneath that, and then Rocha Shorekeeper just underneath that as well. We're only talking like a few seconds between all these. Then we have Augusta Hypercarry. This is a situation where she isn't really negatively impacted by like any electro resistance. She is kind of impacted by this here. Yeah, we definitely are seeing quite a drop between Mortefi and Yuno. Then we have Peeb Sanhua Rover at 209. Then we have the first Jinxie team, and this was the only team that cleared again. I definitely was not able to clear with Jeja, given that, you know, we're going full Glacial resistant with these enemies here. Then we have full free-to-play Galbrena Mortefi Shorekeeper here at 215. Then we have a full free-to-play Cardathea Sanhua Rover just clearing at 225. I would say that this is one that like most players would end up struggling to do. It's much more difficult to manage your arrow stacks when you're not running Chacona in the team, and especially so when you're going like a free-to-play option with like Sanhua Rover instead of like other better options. It definitely did take me a couple resets, but is doable. Then we have Peeb Rover Chacona. Then we have Gion Yuno Shorekeeper just clearing with 1 second to spare, and then Peeb Mortefi Rover just clearing like right on the mark. The teams that were not able to clear with this rotation was Gion Chacona Shorekeeper, Gion Mortefi Shorekeeper, Brant Sanhua Lupa, Carletta Jeji Shorekeeper, Jinxie Jeja Shorekeeper, and Jingliao Yunlin Shorekeeper. Now moving on to the 4th floor, we're working with the same buffs here. This time we have just 2 waves of bosses, 1 Dragon of Dirge and 1 Tempest Mephis. And with the best scoring time, we have Zanipeeb Rober tying with Zanipeeb Shorekeeper in this case. And then we have Zanipeeb Chisa just underneath it. Just underneath that, we have Kardathea Chikona Chisa, then Kardathea Chikona Rover. Then we have Peeb DPS, you know, being amongst the top 10 with Peeb Rover Chisa. Then the top Frolova variation was in this case with Cantarella Shorekeeper. Then we have free-to-play Zani, you know, no Peeb here, scoring the 8th best of everything. Then we have Frolova Shoyuan Shorekeeper at 9 with 157. Peeb mains are winning here at hitting the top 10 mark with Rover Shorekeeper. Or actually, wait, I lied, I forgot. Peeb already made it earlier. So Peeb actually made 2 in the top 10, one with Chisa, one with Shorekeeper. Then underneath that, we have 2 more Frolova variations, and these are both the triple Echo Focus variations with Frolova Cantarella Shoyuan or Frolova Cantarella Rosha. Then we have Carlotta doing very solid in this case. We've finally been freed from the Glacier resistant enemies. Once again, best Camellia team, Sanhua Shorekeeper. And then the Chisa variation I was doing for Camellia, this was one case where I just simply was not able to clear with Rocha, but I was able to clear with Sanhua instead in the mix. Then we have Kardathea Sanhua Chisa at 211, then Kardathea Chikona Shorekeeper, then we had Gion Yuno Chikona, the best Gion variation at 216. I think, yeah, this is the only Gion variation that cleared. I was not able to clear with any of the other variations, unfortunately. At the bottom of Frolova teams was the dual DPS team with Galbrenna. Then we have free-to-play Peeb variations with Sanhua, Mortefi, and then just underneath that with Rover and Chikona. Then we have free-to-play Kardathea Sanhua Rover. This was one where I was kind of barely able to clear, and I don't think that the general player would be able to, but it is doable. The same goes for any other team that follows beneath this that I was able to successfully clear in. As you can see, most of these are fusion. The one that's not is, you know, mainly Electro with Augusta, and we definitely are at a disadvantage here with the fusion and Electro enemies. However, it was just something I really wanted to try to do and see if I could do it, because oftentimes, you know, throughout the past in the middle tower, kind of before we got these 2 additional floors, it's still been like possible to brute force elemental resistant content with certain teams and certain matchups. So it was just something I wanted to, you know, test myself and see if it was doable or not. So yeah, that about wraps it up. We have a whole lot of new characters coming in 3.0 and even new mechanics with the whole tune break stuff going on. So definitely curious to see how the meta ends up changing over time. So this is something I like to do every once in a while. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. We'll definitely come back and do another one of these in due time, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.